the story of a girl who disappeared, and a note that didn't feel quite right. Of a father who watched everything, and a sister who refused to let silence win. You've entered the dark heart of one American family. I'm Lindsay, and it's time to rest in peace. Today's story is about Alissa Turney. Alissa was a 17-year-old, typical teenager, grew up in Phoenix. She was just as you would expect, funny, outspoken, and rebellious.
It's me!
She was testing the limits as all teenagers do. She had dreams of becoming a hairdresser and was saving money to buy a car. She lived in Phoenix with her stepfather, Michael Turney, and her younger half-sister, Sarah. Their mother, Barbara, had died of cancer in 1993, leaving Michael to raise both girls. Alissa was the kind of girl who didn't go quietly. She was vocal. She was independent. She certainly wouldn't be the type to leave without a word, unless something was very, very wrong. Teachers described her as bright and sassy, often clashing with authority, but never disinterested. Friends recall her as warm, hilarious, and always willing to lend an ear. She was popular, always on the phone and writing in her diary.
She was a star, girl.
In May of 2001, it was the last day of school before summer break. Michael Turney allegedly picked Alissa up early from school. He later told police that they had lunch together, got into a minor argument, and then returned home. According to Michael, Alissa stormed off to her room in anger, and when her younger sister Sarah got home from school, Alissa was gone. A note sat on Alissa's dresser. Dad and Sarah, when you dropped me off at school today, I decided I really am going to California. Sarah, you wanted me gone, and now you have it. Dad, I took $300 from you.
She's a thief.
But things didn't necessarily add up. For example, Alissa had plans that weekend with friends. Her cell phone, makeup, and personal items were entirely untouched. She had no driver's license. There was no activity on her social security number or bank account ever again. Michael Turney reported Alissa as a runaway, but not immediately. And oddly, he was adamant that she had gone to California with an older, unnamed man. He even distributed handwritten flyers, blaming school officials, friends, and even union members he believed were targeting him. Police initially treated this case as a standard teenage runaway case. But Alissa's friends were saying something very different. One by one, they came forward, saying Alissa had expressed fear. One even recalled Alissa saying, "If I ever go missing, it's my dad." Michael Turney, let's hear a little more about this guy, Michael Turney, Alissa's stepfather. He was a former sheriff's deputy and an electrician. However, he was paranoid and obsessive, particularly about security. To that end, he had wired their entire home with surveillance cameras, including hidden ones in the vents. The footage from that day, he claimed it was overwritten. Police seized all sorts of detailed logs of phone calls and activities, along with tons and tons, hundreds of hours of video footage. But any entries from May 17th were conveniently missing. Neighbors told police Michael spent the day welding in the garage, an odd activity inconsistent with his story about returning from lunch and dealing with a runaway daughter. There's even an audio clip, one of the neighbors making a statement in court, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like,
"Oh yeah!"
He never even mentioned she was gone. He acted like it was a normal afternoon. Now, I don't know about you, but I do not feel that those actions and behaviors are consistent with a doting, loving father who's looking for his missing daughter.
Devontae sang.
Another thing that was interesting in this case is that Michael was all over the search parties. He was everywhere. He was you didn't ever go to a search party without seeing him there. And so from the outside looking in, people who didn't have the same level of intelligence that the police had probably expected that this was a very devoted and loving father. But I think there's more to this story. Sarah Turney, which is Alissa's younger sister, believed her father's story at first. I mean, she was only 12, and she trusted him. This was the only father she had ever known. But as she grew up, things started to fall apart. His paranoia, his obsession with blaming others, and most of all, his refusal to talk about Alissa.
You should have started selling crack.
Sarah began asking questions, and when she got answers, they were pretty inconsistent. She requested her sister's case file through a public records request, and what she read horrified her. Alissa had accused Michael of molestation. Friends confirmed. She had confided in them, after all. One teacher had even contacted child services, but the case was dropped, buried. Sarah's advocacy transformed into a mission. She began documenting everything, launching her own podcast, and researching the case and case law to understand how justice could still be pursued. In 2008, police served a search warrant on Michael Turney's home. What they found shocked everyone. Seized pipe bombs laid out by ATF, photos from the bomb manifesto, 19 homemade pipe bombs, a 97-page manifesto outlining a plot against the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
You want to play rough?
A massive collection of videotapes, some labeled with Alissa's name.
Say hello to my little friend.
But no murder charges were filed, and Alissa was still missing. Still no body. Now the TikTok campaign that went viral. Sarah Turney, again, this is Alissa, the victim's younger sister, launched a social media campaign in 2020 using TikTok. Her videos quickly went viral, reaching millions of people. She begged people to share Alissa's story. She went on Dr. Phil, started a podcast, and kept her father's name in the media.
She put that thing on her lips.
The result? Tremendous pressure. Media coverage, momentum. Public outcry grew, demanding justice. Flash forward from 2008 to 2020. The date is August 20th, and after 19 years, Michael Turney was arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
That was a whole decade. You tripping.
Of the death of his daughter, Alissa Turney. He was 72 years old at the time. And the affidavit included statements from friends, evidence of controlling behavior, and Alissa's own words recorded on audio tape. But still, the case wasn't a slam dunk. In July 2023, Michael Turney stood trial. Sarah sat in the courtroom surrounded by supporters and media, and prosecutors presented their case, a pattern of abuse, control, and violence.
Abuse? Like this? Like this?
Friends testified that Alissa had confided in them about sexual abuse. A teacher had suspected something. A note was entered as evidence. The missing surveillance tape was highlighted. But the defense focused on the lack of forensic evidence. No body, no weapon, no eyewitnesses. And in the end, the jury agreed. And Michael was acquitted.
Damn. And they skated with 2 pairs of skates with Air Forces on top.
The shock rippled across the internet. The family had waited over 20 years for this day, and still no justice. I cannot imagine, as a family member of Alissa Turney, to have worked so relentlessly for the justice of my sister, my cousin, someone in my family, and for that to be the end result. I'm sure they were devastated, but felt intensely failed by the American justice system. And to this day, the case remains officially unsolved. Michael Turney is a free man. He is walking the streets somewhere, very likely in Phoenix, Arizona. And Sarah continues to advocate for her sister, hoping that someone, somewhere will come forward with some information. She hosts a podcast and continues engaging media outlets and coordinating with victims' advocacy groups. For Sarah, the mission is no longer just about Alissa. It's about the larger system, about the way abuse is ignored, dismissed, or buried.
Ain't nobody bigger than the program. You hear me?
Alissa Turney deserves justice, and wherever that justice comes, through new evidence, a new witness, or public pressure, it's not over yet. If you know anything about the disappearance of Alissa Turney, please contact the Phoenix Police Department. You can report information in a number of ways, including ways that allow you to remain anonymous.
Or you could call the back of this dick. How about that? See where it gets you. Splash!
We've listed some of the non-emergency and general reporting lines underneath this episode's in the description. But you can also go to silentwitness.com or I think you can call 480-WITNESS to provide anonymous tips as well. And I believe that
Don't do that. That's dry submission.
Phoenix Police Department allows people to make submissions anonymously as well, but I'd have to confirm that. Nonetheless, you might be the person that cracks Alissa's case wide open and brings her family the justice and peace that they deserve.
Bust that thing wide open.
Also, please visit the podcast started by Alissa's sister. It's called voicesforjustice.com, and we'll link it in the show notes below as well, where she not only has covered Alissa's case, but a great many other cases that really needed exposure and additional eyes in order to be solved. Finally, share Alissa's story. Use your voice, because silence only helps the guilty. This has been RIP with Lindsay and 7. Until next time, stay curious and cautious.
Tanky, tanky.